Welcome back to the A2Schools podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Cluley, Director of Communications for the Ann Arbor Public Schools. We've been on a little bit of a summer break hiatus here at the A2Schools podcast, but now that school is back in the swing of things, we figured we'd bring the podcast back too. Today, I'm joined as always with Dr. Swift, our Superintendent of Schools. Welcome, Dr. Swift.
Good afternoon. It's great to be here, and how exciting to get our podcast off the ground for 22-23.
That's right. And we also have with us today Dr. Roberta Heyward. She's the Executive Director of K-8 and Middle Level Education.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am ecstatic to be with you all today.
And our final guest is Matt Hilton. He's the Executive Director of the Elementary Education level. Welcome, Matt.
Hey, thank you, Andrew. It's a pleasure to be here with you and Dr. Swift and Dr. Heyward.
So I thought that we would start with, since it's the start of the school year, we'll start talking about how things are going so far. Dr. Swift, what are your thoughts on what you've seen so far this year?
Well, you know, Andrew, we've just passed the harvest moon last weekend. We are in the third week of the school year, ready to open a soccer season with Rec and Ed of more than 3,000 of our students participating. It is such a great time in the Ann Arbor Public Schools. We love the opening of the school year, but we also love that time in September where the rhythms of a consistent in-person school day have taken root. I've been out in the schools and teachers are really establishing those learning cycles in the classroom. I see such a focus on our students and centering the joy in learning in our schools. We also have a great enrichment and athletic activities underway in the district. It's just such a great season, and I'm so glad to be here with you all.
Thank you, Dr. Swift, for those opening remarks. I'm going to turn it to the level areas now. Mr. Hilton, what have you seen at the elementary level?
Thanks, Andrew. At the elementary level, I would share with the community that it has been a really, really nice launch to our school year. It's been wonderful to welcome certainly our students and teachers back into the buildings, but also parents and grandparents back into the buildings. That beloved first day, Andrew, when so many of our parents and grandparents are now walking their children to their kindergarten classroom for the very first time, or to their first grade classroom for the very first time. Andrew, it's just been a really joyful launch to the school year.
That's always great to hear. What about you, Dr. Heyward, at the secondary level? You obviously aren't welcoming, the really young kids, but you're still welcoming kids back to school.
Absolutely, Andrew. Thank you for that. It's been an exciting time reopening this school year. Parents, students, and our school teams are simply elated that school has resumed and we are open. And as Mr. Hilton shared, it's been a wonderful opportunity to just welcome back our families, our school communities. It's really an exciting time in Ann Arbor Public Schools.
Okay. Now, I know one thing that always happens around this time of year are curriculum nights. I think some buildings have already had them and some haven't had them yet. I'm hoping that maybe you guys could share a little bit more about what a family can expect when they go to curriculum night.
Andrew, I'll start there. We think of students being excited about going to school and participating in all the enrichment and learning activities. But I have to share that I'm just hearing and seeing so much joy from among our parents and community members. Our schools are fully open. We are hosting all of our fall events and even also welcoming our community groups back into our buildings this year. So I'm just delighted that it is also a tremendous time for our parents and for community as well in our schools.
Dr. Heyward or Mr. Hilton, do you have anything to add about curriculum nights?
Sure thing, Andrew. So this is a time where our parents and our community have an opportunity to meet the principals and meet teachers that are included on their child's schedule. If the curriculum night was held in person, they had an opportunity to actually spend time in each of the classrooms, listening and learning from teachers about what is expected this school year and the rich academic that will take place this school year in those classrooms.
Andrew, if I could, I would just add to that. Everything that Dr. Heyward shared there is certainly true at elementary too. The one nuance that I would share a little bit is just that it's an opportunity for parents to hear not only about the content in the curriculum that their child is going to be learning, but also to hear about the routines and procedures of our elementary classrooms.
And don't you think, Mr. Hilton, at elementary, it's just so reassuring for parents to see that learning space that their child is in throughout the day, and also perhaps to benefit from some tips and guidance from teachers and from our principals about how to support your child. And this is true at all ages, elementary and secondary, those tips and that guidance on how best support your child's learning at school this year.
Dr. Swift, I would completely agree with you. I think that these moments can't be understated, because these initial moments, like a curriculum night and seeing the learning space that children are experiencing, hearing about the curriculum, but also then building that relationship with the teacher, because we know that we serve kids best when that partnership between school and home really exists in a fully formed way.
That's great. You know, I know, Dr. Heyward, that at middle and high school, some students would prefer their parents not come to school. But I think the connections are important at those secondary levels also, don't you?
They are absolutely important. And the connections, we never want the connections to stop after students leave elementary. It's important that those relationships are continuously built, that the communication is always and ever present, and that we work in partnership and in collaboration with our parents and our communities.
Excellent. And what do we have to look forward to? We talked a little bit about the opening. We've now gotten families ready for curriculum nights. What kind of things are you expecting to happen in the coming weeks as we get deeper into the school year?
Andrew, thank you for that question. Right now, we know that our teachers and school teams are working diligently to build those authentic relationships with our students and with our parent community. As I enter buildings and go into these classrooms, I know that rigorous learning activities are taking place in every classroom as teachers are getting to know students. There is a real joy throughout our school buildings. I know that both high school and middle school athletics and clubs are well underway. And field trips are being planned, with some schools already having participated in field trips.
Andrew, at elementary, much of the same is absolutely true with what Dr. Heyward just shared. We are certainly in the midst of building relationships with students and families, setting the classroom routines, building the environments that we want children to have, and as well as digging deep into our content areas of math, literacy, science, and so forth. When I think about what's to come, I think some of the things that we're looking forward to are the typical events for this time of year, which include things like curriculum night, which we've talked about, but also PTO meetings and school and PTO celebrations like Fun Run and fall festivals that will come soon, as well as many of the upcoming field trips that will occur not only this fall, but also throughout the entire year.
You know, Matt, Mr. Hilton, I just have to jump in there. You say typical events, and Dr. Heyward referenced the joy, and we've all commented over the previous 2.5 weeks of how we feel that joy in every school. These are the typical fall events, but what is so very special about this fall is we are all so grateful that after the 2 very hard years, challenging years that we've had, to really be fully open and fully engaged. So I have to share that whether it's a fun run or a school fall festival, or even just the schools I've been in and celebrating a big lunch in the cafeteria, it is so exciting and so special to be fully back into school with our schools completely open and participating in all of these events and enrichment activities.
It certainly is an exciting time in the Ann Arbor Public Schools. So I'm just thinking, we've talked a little bit about what has happened, what is happening right now, and what they're going to be seeing in the future. But for families that don't really know how they can expect to find out information about their child's school and the Ann Arbor Public Schools in general, I'm hoping that maybe, Dr. Swift, you can share a little bit about how they will find out this information.
Thank you, Andrew. Just like our teachers are establishing the rhythms of a consistent school day, and our schools are getting those, daily activities in place so everyone knows what to expect. The same thing is happening with our communications early in the fall. So we know that really the communication in the district follows two pathways. One is that communication that comes from the principal, from the school level, and the other is that communication that comes from the district level. We work really hard not to overload people's email boxes, and yet we know how important it is for our students and parents, our staff and community to know what's coming up. So, Andrew, from the superintendent updates, we typically will look at those a couple of times each month, so maybe every other week or so. And then I know, Andrew, you'll talk more about your AAPS communications that folks look forward to each week. But the reality is we'll have these rhythms in place, and then also we'll always know that if there is an issue or a concern that arises, that we will communicate in real time. So maybe we can go to the schools and talk a little bit about what parents can expect. I know it's a little bit different at elementary than at secondary. So would you all kind of fill in that part, please?
Sure. So school communications will be sent regularly from school principals and PTSOs. We will always reach out to families when there is a need to communicate any essential issues. And of course, families can always reach out to teachers or their school principal as needed and as often as needed when they have questions.
Andrew, I'll jump in for just a second here. I would share that the point that Dr. Heyward made there about reaching out when parents have questions. I think that's a really important starting point for parents to be reaching out to teachers and principals to seek the information, but also to know that our classroom teachers and our principals will be communicating regularly with you as well. So be on the lookout for their updates as well.
Excellent. And I will just add that I do put out every Friday afternoon, send the AAPS weekly update. And that we're shifting the focus just a little bit this year to have a little bit more information about the district. We're going to be having the updates on sort of when the next board meeting is and things like that. We'll have the updates on district-wide information that might be important to find out about. We'll share some highlights that we of the stories, the excellent stories that Joe Mathis puts in the AAPS District News. And then we also have a section in there of Rec and Ed events and activities that families can sign up for. And then lastly, just some of those community events that we find out about that we're sharing that are appropriate for students of all ages to attend. And so that's going to be a regular thing, Friday afternoons, the AAPS weekly update. I do also want to be, don't want to be negligent to forget that you can also find out all about the Ann Arbor Public Schools by our Facebook page, Ann Arbor Public Schools. We have on Twitter at A2Schools. And of course, Dr. Swift has her own Twitter at A2Schools Super. And that's the very, very first place that school closing announcements will be getting made as we enter the winter months. And of course, also we're on YouTube under Ann Arbor Public Schools as well. And obviously, you're listening to the A2Schools podcast. That's another great source of information.
Very good. So, team, if parents say have their first child in school and this fall is their first experience, those parents all the way to our parents of high school students, if they want to engage or watch for our messages, I'm hearing that they would expect to hear from the school principal on a consistent basis, and then watch for the superintendent updates, which is more of a district look at the happenings in the district. And then, Andrew, I know that many parents watch every Friday afternoon for your AAPS update that has all of those areas that you just covered. And then most importantly, just being sure that if you have a question, email your teacher, email your principal, reach out to any of us so that we can answer your questions. We are here to serve our students, our families, our parents, and we want to respond to you when you have a question about the district or about your school or your classroom.
All righty. Well, thank you, Dr. Swift. Thank you for joining us. And I'd also like to thank Matt Hilton. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Andrew. It was a pleasure to be here.
And thank you, Dr. Heyward, giving the secondary perspective.
Thank you, Andrew. What a wonderful opportunity.
And Dr. Swift, any closing remarks?
Well, the successful launch of a school year is really the result of tremendous work. And I just want to pause today to give a special shout out to our teachers, our support staff, our school leaders, our district team, running our buses and serving food every day. This effort to get our schools fully open, we're just so grateful to our team and to our parents who support their children getting to school every day, and to our students who show up happy to learn. We're just so grateful. Strong schools are a mark of strong communities. And we're so grateful for the support of everyone in our community for our Ann Arbor Public Schools. We wish you a wonderful fall 2022.
Yes, here's to a great fall kickoff of the school year. And thank you for listening to this week's edition of the A2Schools podcast. As always, if you have any questions, you can go out and check out our website, a2schools.org. If you have a specific question that you'd like to maybe be presented and asked on the A2Schools podcast, don't hesitate to email communications@a2schools.org, and you can ask your questions that way, and maybe we can use it on an upcoming episode of the A2Schools podcast. Thank you very much for listening to this week's edition.